Great to have you join me on the program Law and You that talks about the nitty-gritty of the law. And today we are considering the topic, which is on the ban on prostitution in Benin City, Edo State in particular, and looking at the reactions that have been trailing this ban in Benin City. There's need to look at the legality on the policy of government that came up with this resolution. And discussing this with me is a legal practitioner, by that I mean custodian of the law, who is Matthias Obayuwana. Thanks for joining me, Matthias.
Thank you, Philip. Good afternoon, viewers.
I'm your host, Philip Omogyupo. We'll take a short break. Do stay. Thanks for joining me again. Well, let's look at this issue that has been burning, and we want to look at what the legality behind it. We understand that the reactions have been huge in terms of what the government did in terms of making up that policy. But what do you see? Is it does it have anything to do with the legality? Does it have anything to do with attending to a provision of the Constitution that legalizes or illegalizes prostitution?
Well, prostitution is as old as man itself. If it dates back even during the time of Christ, you remember that someone was being stoned for engaging in adultery. If you're engaging in sex with some other person who is not your husband, it's said to be adultery. It's also said to be prostituting. We have seen in the book of Proverbs where Christians, children of God, have been advised to incline to the ears of wisdom and run away from those loose persons, and that the way of the prostitute is the way to hell, to the grave. You know, so that has been a social problem that has been condemning that act of prostitution over the years. As far as Nigeria is concerned, under the Islamic Penal Code, it is at law. It's an offense to engage in the act of prostitution. Under the criminal code that applies to the southern part of Nigeria, I have tried my best to comb through the provisions of the law. I find it difficult to find any section that outlaws prostitution. The various sections in the laws, they outlaw activities that borders on prostitution. For example, the criminal code for section 222 to 225, if you read through the entire section of the criminal code, it borders on procuring persons to engage in the act of prostitution, especially persons under the age of 18. It borders on running a brothel. It borders on, living on the act of prostitution, the business or the trade of prostitution, and all of that. So if the law can codify and penalize activities that is surrounding the act of prostitution, why does it find it difficult to nail it on the head to say, should anyone engage in the business of prostitution or free yourself? Just like you have male, female prostitute, you also have male prostitute. So any person who will offer his or herself, for monetary gains, to give a sexual pleasure, whatever way the legislation will codify, will classify it, and say for such an activity will amount to the act of prostitution. And anyone who engages in such act, social punishment should be meted out. They cannot find that in the law. I went a bit further and I looked at the Trafficking in Persons Prohibition Law or Act, and I found that what that also criminalizes are those persons who procure anyone to engage in the act of prostitution. I also went beyond that to check Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. That talks about indecent exposure. Should anyone indecently expose, his or herself or genital organs or private parts, such a person will be liable to punishment in such a way that you expose yourself to discomfort of other persons.
And even indecent behavior.
Yes, and that act applies only to Abuja. because it's, it's an act of National Assembly that is applicable only to the FCT. Now, the Edo State law recently passed on violence against person prohibition law, section 30 thereof, try to take a leaf from that section 25 of the Act, of the VAP Act. In section 30 of the VAP law, they water it down. In the VAP Act, they say any person who indecently exposes his or her genital organs to the discomfort of another person.
To the discomfort
of another person. Such a person committed an offense and their punishment. But the prison term and fine. Under the VAP law, they said any person who exposes his or her genital organs in private part in the public place.
Oh.
Whereas in the VAP Act, the word public place is not, so it can be in private. If somebody can be sexually harassed in a workplace, in a private environment, and all of that, the VAP Act will hold against you. I am not surprised that VAP Act applies only to Abuja because the Islamic laws, under the penal code, outlaws prostitution. So I'm sure that they could be that strict. But I'm surprised the VAP law says in public. So if they expose their private organs in private, it's not an offense.
It's not an offense.
If you do this stuff in private, it's not an offense. But if you expose it in public, it's an offense. And now these people that engage in the act of prostitution, we see them on the street. They are always indecently dressed. You see them very transparent and so revealing clothes. That is the artifact of their trade. Trying to lure customers, to call people to attention to themselves. They offer themselves, for sex, for money. You see them along here now, you see them all over the town. And it becomes an eyesore. And the government came with the policy to say, look, this thing cannot continue. We must find a way of putting a stop to it. So just such an indecent exposure in the public space could be an offense under the VAP law. And that offense does not carry punishment of imprisonment. They say if anybody convicted, they will do community service or pay a fine of 25,000 naira, if I'm not mistaken, or 50, any fine not more than 50,000 naira. That is what is closest to it.
Okay.
So, and we are all clear that under the provision of our law, the Constitution, section 36(12) of our Constitution says that no one will be convicted or punished for any offense,
any act
that is not codified, that is not written, contained in written law. So, if that is the case, realize like the pronouncement of the Mr. Governor is akin to a pronouncement that could have been made in the military era. Even in the military era, their word becomes law by decree. Even that decree is signed, really, it's not by word of man. In the military era, you cannot even just use your mouth to decree. That decree is still signed. So say if anything like this happened, it is. So the government was taking a step further to present a bill to the House of Assembly so that section 36(12) will not be the hindrance to this policy statement. As it stands now, the policy statement is being hindered as 36(12) because the only law that is closest to it is indecent exposure in public.
Okay,
that's the of the VAP law. Okay,
so that means prosecution will be difficult in this regard.
Prosecution will be difficult in this regard because it surprises me that you could codify activities that surround the act of prostitution. Don't procure. I looked at the word procurement. The Court of Appeal defined that in the case of Follow-Shaw against FRON. In that case, they're dealing with a situation whereby someone, try to lure or encourage some other person to engage in the act of prostitution in Libya. And it was brought under the Prohibition Against Trafficking Persons Act, section 15 and 16 thereof. And in that law, the Court of Appeal defined the word procurement to mean not just, deceiving them or bringing them by coercion, subtle encouragement and whatever means at all. If you engage in encouraging the person to involve in it, you may not force the person. The person comes to you, like this trade, I need some money. So I say, well, people are making money from this act of prostitution. Do you mind?
And if you in any way influence that
exactly that amount to be liable. Procurement.
Okay.
So now you who has encouraged someone to go and do it, the law says, I think that's about 14 years imprisonment. That act.
Without an option of fine.
Without an option of fine. Without an option of fine. Now, without an option of fine. If there is a punishment for you that will procure someone to go and do it, they arrest you who is engaging. Why are you in this business? One man said, business is very profitable, and so I came into the business. Whether you are 18 or less than 18 or more than 18, even though the act specifies that any person less than 18. Now, even if you are 18 and I procure you to come into the business, I could still be held liable. You who is engaging in the act, what happens to you? There is no law that says that if you engage in the act,
okay, but you may mention
there is a law that I cannot manage a brothel.
Yes, exactly. That's where I'm going.
So I cannot. I cannot manage a brothel.
If we go by that,
so if you come to my, if you come to the liable, you will arrest the one who is managing the brothel.
Oh,
the person who came to do business in the brothel will be let loose under the law, because there is no provision that says that you who engage yourself in sexual activity for money, there's an offense for it. So are you saying to find that in the law? So are you saying that by this attention should have been on those who organize, who have brothels, instead of the attention
paying attention
the
to the
law has provided penalty for those who organize protests, for those who procure, who encourage anyone to engage in the act,
so they can be prosecuted.
Yes, the people engaging in this act, why would you leave them out of the penalty? There should be a specific penalty for those who engage specifically in the act.
But now that we don't have any federal enactment in that regard, can't we start from prosecuting those who have protests? Can we start from those who influence it? This is not in a way of putting it to an end.
Those you find along AMR Road, they don't go to protest. Even when a private individual comes to pick any of them, they go to any of the hotels here and there. A brothel is a place that we know it for prostitutes. So just one room is there for, they call it short term, those who engage in it. So people come there and do and get away. Now you pick these people along the road. Sometimes they sleep with them in their cars in public place. Sometimes they take them to their hotels. Sometimes they take them to their various homes. How can you engage in that? So when you come to that AMR and all those areas where they are engaging themselves in prostitution, what they do is to raid them. Anyone you find is indecently dressed. Perhaps, like I said, the closest law offense to it is indecent exposure, and then that can also be defined. If you see, if I dress in a revealing manner, because the law need to define what indecent exposure is on the private part. If a cloth is covering whatever they are wearing, their genitals, look, yes, covering it. It might be revealing, but why is your eyes looking at such stuff? Did I remove it? Am I naked? Or the public? So it becomes an issue. So my take is that take it beyond all of those facts, all of those issues or controversies, and make a law specifically. Just like Governor Shomole at a point said, I banned a bike. Somebody went to court and said, your word cannot become law, sir. You can't just pronounce and you ban bike, the policy statement. They present the bill to the House of Assembly, let them codify it, so the system will not hold you. The law court, the Supreme Court have heard on that. I will come and fact by me that you cannot convict anybody for an offense that is not codified. Okay. So for the state government to have done so, they should take a step further. Present a bill, take the courage, present a bill to the House, and say any person found in this circumstance, this is an offense for it. So it's possible that even though there's no federal enactment in that regard, the state can also push in that regard too. Yes, the only federal enactment that we have where it is that applicable to the northern part, like I said, the Islamic Sharia law, the penal code, there's an offense against auto prostitution. You know, I think it's a Kenny or whatever it is. It's an offense against that. But here in the southern part, there is no specific legislation on it. In the northern part, they said if you are a vagabond, if you are just lay about and all of that, they codified it. They didn't even call it prostitution, offering yourself, sex for money. They should call it by its name. Call a spade a spade. So codify it and make that legislation. Okay. So that there can be an end to it.
While that is ongoing, why we hope that should be achieved in the nearest possible time, what do you make of those who have brothels? And even can't it also be extended to hotels? Because even some government functionaries could also partake in this act where they pick these ladies, and take them to hotels to do that. So what do you see in totality that can be done to extend this to hotels or stop the process of encouraging or influencing?
Yes. See, the point is this. I know that this may be an issue of a public policy. Some fundamentalists may extend the issue, the frontiers, to say, look, it's an infringement of the fundamental rights of the persons engaging in that. Is their body.
In the business, okay, in the act.
Yes, so it's their body, and they are adults. If two consenting adults decide to engage in any whatever, why should it be an issue? It should be an issue because it's a social problem. Because when they engage in that, those people, they don't engage in that with their clear eyes. They are under they will be under the influence of drugs, alcohol, whatever, anything at all that can keep them high and make them lose their shame and self-dignity. So they do that. Some of them in the process of engaging in that, engaging in murder, engaging in other criminal activities of robbery and the rest of it. So the risk factor far outweighs the advantage.
Okay.
So if the government believes that certain person they want to push to say their body, they are matured adults, they can decide to do whatever they want to do, the government can make a law to regulate their activities. A law to regulate the activities. It must be 18. It must not be found on the street. It must be whatever it is. If they believe that they want to save the trade of prostitution, that is, since it's as old as man, they want to save that trade, they can find a way of making a law to regulate it. They can also go to the extreme of saying we abolish it, just like a same-sex relationship. The law against a same-sex gay, whatever it is, lesbianism. There's a law that says you cannot do such things. You cannot meet. You cannot sleep with some other person in an unnatural way. Okay. Sodomy and the rest of it. There are laws, penalizing such conduct.
Okay. Are you by that saying that it will be a difficult laws? Okay.
If there are such laws, if the lawmaker had the courage to codify it, to say, look, there should not be an act of sodomy, there should not be an act of lesbianism or gay same-sex marriage, whatever is at law. They are there. Special provisions in our law, section 14 or thereabout. They carry by 14 years imprisonment under the criminal code. If that is there, why can we not also take the courage to say, look, those who engage in this act, this is the punishment that should flow.
Yes.
So we should start from there.
You made mention of the act that it could possibly go against their human rights.
Yes.
They could also say that that's against their rights as a human being.
If they say the law is too stiff, then they can regulate it.
Yes. Then don't you think this could be a setback to make it illegal?
It is a law. It is a law. That's why I told you that. When I made that statement, by the way, I quickly told you that if the lawmaker had the courage to penalize sodomy and gay, whether or not the person is at the age of 18, whatever age you are, that such 18 cannot be. Why can you also take the courage to also penalize this and say this thing cannot be? Whether or not they want to complain that it's against their, because liberties has a limit. Your right to your liberty, fundamental right, stops where mine begins. You cannot be carrying out your trade of prostitution to say, okay, fine, it's my fundamental right to do whatever I like. I can have sex in the public. I can be walking along the street and go naked. I can do anything I like. After it's my right. No, just stop where the right of decent men begins. To say, look, you cannot pollute my environment. Okay, but
how do you regulate this when there is this possibility that it can also be done in private? See, where a man can approach a woman, for instance, and discuss with such a lady, and then such a thing is done in the private. So how do you tell who is a prostitute, or how do you tell what to criminalize?
See, what have people do now? Many of them call themselves they say hook up, right? Or they say hook up. They say they don't go to school. They say Rosges, whatever it is. I mean, I'm also believe on the fact that certain politicians also make use of them. They call them conference materials.
Of course, yes.
So whatever it is. So we all know that it is a social norm, and it may be abnormal to many of us, many of those who believe that so decent a law not to be engaging in such. And there are people who are hooked onto this thing who cannot do without it.
Yes, and these are setbacks. These are setbacks.
You may likely call it setback. Where a law is being passed, I'm sure there will be first, second reading, public hearing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fine. They can invite those who may be engaging in this act to say, look, this is our business. So, as we are making this law now, let us find a way of cushioning the effect. I agree with you. We should not go and line up on the street. We should not be here. We can find a way of organizing ourselves in a particular way to be sure that whoever comes in here is maybe bring a birth certificate that you are 18, and whoever comes to sleep with them, maybe they also get HIV status to be sure that they do not carry another disease and all of that. So we are going to be, our place is a regulated place. And so government cannot tax those who are doing it. Okay, if you come to this regulated area, you want to be sure that those who are coming here, they are not going to give HIV to other people. They use condom. They are not going to give it. So,
what about the visitors that come?
Government can,
even if you do that, what about the visitors that come to sleep with them?
Again, they also check the stuff.
Those who go to sleep.
In other countries where they legalize prostitution, it's regulated. They check all of these things. So government
like
can
in Denmark, Finland, Austria.
So government can sit down at a round table and call the stakeholders in this kind of prostitution, the customers and those who are engaging in the trade, on a round table to discuss the way out. They cannot be hanging out on the street the way they are doing.
So you seem to be suggesting that there should be a way to legalize it. I'm
not saying that. I do not support prostitution.
Okay.
I have made my point here that government should be courageous enough to make a law to penalize it outrightly.
Okay.
I'm also telling you that because there are always two sides to a coin.
Okay.
And as a lawyer, sometimes you play the devil's advocate. So it's okay, fine. If you are on the other side, what kind of argument can you provide?
Okay.
And now people may come with an argument to say that it's a fundamental right. Okay. They are adults. You should allow them to do whatever they want to do. And I'm saying that that right that they want to pursue may be infringing on the right of other persons around them. And for that reason, they must find a way of balancing it. So government can now say, okay, fine. Let us call a roundtable conference. As we are placing the bill to the House of Assembly for passage, call all the stakeholders and discuss how it will be regulated to say, okay, fine, they cannot find you on the street. Okay. I told you must do it.
Okay, but this will give them a soft landing.
It might likely give them a soft landing. But we must start first from putting your best foot forward.
Okay.
So before they start complaining, you put your best foot forward.
Okay.
As you are arresting and you are prosecuting and people are going to jail, and those who are in the business say, governor, please, this is too stiff. Let us find a way of watching this. Okay, come to let us discuss. We can send another bill to the House to regulate it.
Exactly at this point, yes, exactly at this point where they also talk about economic hardship. Yes. They are having hit hard, in terms of coping, getting livelihood. Yes. And now this is happening. This policy is happening, and law enforcement agents are everywhere trying to raid the streets of prostitutes. What's your advice or what's your nudge? In spite of the hardship,
if you say hardship,
these prostitutes or ladies in quote,
yes,
may not have other means of survival. What do you advise the government?
This is not the first time it has happened. People always give reason for doing things. The armed robber will tell you that when they arrest them, oh, this is their first time because they were poor. They didn't have money to feed up when they went to armed robbery. It's not an excuse. I don't have money to pay school fees. I went to a prostitution. It's not an excuse. I saw a young lady, beautiful young lady, driving a Mercedes Benz being used for taxi. He has a taxi sign at Sapler Road. I was driving along, so I saw the young lady. I told my colleague, I said, look at this young lady. She's making a living from her vehicle, maybe her father's vehicle, her mother's vehicle, a Mercedes Benz car with a taxi sign. She's making a living. So you can think outside of the box. But there are lazy people and lazy young ladies. They want the easy way out.
Okay.
They don't want to do anything with their time. All their care job is very easy now. You just lie down on the bed, whichever position, and then they give you money. You cannot make hair, do whatever you want to do. So it's an easy way out. India Renaissance that was brought to be a pet project of His Excellency Mrs. Eki Igbenegio. She started this story. Look, there should be an end to this. We cannot continue like this. And she said, India Renaissance, come and learn the art of any trade. Hairdressing, cake baking, whatever it is. Is it not still alive?
Okay,
thank you. People are taking advantage of that.
Thank you very much, Matthias Obayuwana. Obviously, we're going to be having a second episode on this topic, which talks about the ban on prostitution, Benin experience, and its legality. My name is Philip Omo Gupon. We'll do this same time next week. Goodbye.